Last weekend, I know, Liz and Noah, that Abigail was finally released after spending 50 days as a hostage in Gaza. First and foremost, how is she doing?
Well, Abigail is safe. She is back in Israel, but she returned to having no parents. They were both murdered on October 7th by Hamas terrorists. She can't go back to her home because her home was destroyed on October 7th. And she's a 4-year old. She turned four a couple days before she was released. So for Abigail, the blessing is that she has her brother and her sister and her cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents that she's very close with, that she lived right next door to before all of this happened. But she came out very dark as a child that didn't have light in her. And she's a very beautiful and a very energetic child. And so when she saw her cousins and her brother and sister, she lit up and she was back to being a child who was surrounded by the love that she hadn't had for 50 days. One of the things that we all understand is that it's going to take a long time to understand really how Abigail is. But the blessing is that she is surrounded by the most beautiful and loving family. And they are going to do everything in their power to make sure she has what I would call a beautiful life. And that is pretty much how she is. And she's really only been with her family for 5 days.
Noah, what has this ordeal been like for you?
It's been horrible. I mean, we had to bury Abigail's parents, not knowing where their child is. I think for all of the family members of hostages and beyond that, we've been living an ongoing terror attack, not able to eat, not able to sleep, and just wondering how our loved ones are doing. And it's been pretty horrible.
What have you learned about the conditions under which Abigail was being held, Liz?
Well, we're learning little by little, especially from the woman who she was with, that basically it was filthy. It was dirty. They were moved a couple of times. It's not clear exactly where they were moved to and how they were moved, but they weren't in one place. But basically, it was filthy. It was insect infested. There wasn't a lot. There was not proper food for any child to eat for 50 days. And we're slowly learning, but those are the things that have been shared with us. Obviously, that came from the mother who was with Abigail when they were abducted on October 7th.
You explained to me a couple of weeks ago, Liz, that Abigail was under her father's body. He had been shot and killed by Hamas terrorists. She managed to get out from under him, run to a neighbor's home where there was a mom and three children, two boys and a girl. And Abigail was abducted at the same time this family was abducted.
Yes. What we learned a few days after October 7th, at first, we believed that Abigail had been murdered with her father because the 6 and 10-year-old had seen the Hamas terrorists shoot their father and he fell onto Abigail. So they ran home. They were the only reporters that we had in the beginning, as they were in a closet for 14 hours in their home. But what we learned was that a witness on the kibbutz had seen the mother and children being taken from the kibbutz by Hamas terrorists. So that was the last we learned of this woman, her three children, and Abigail. After that moment, we did not know anything about them for 50 days.
But luckily, this mother was there to help Abigail while she was being held hostage.
Yes.
We're so grateful to this mother. We can't imagine what she went through herself, having to experience this herself and navigate this experience for four children. I mean, it's unimaginable.
But we prayed. We literally prayed. This was our one hope, was that this woman was holding Abigail and giving her as much love as one could under those conditions. And we could only imagine that's what a woman, a mother would do. And that is what this woman did.
I know that President Biden, Liz, reached out to you after Abigail was released. Can you share with us anything about that conversation?
Well, what I can tell you is that he first called my brother-in-law in Israel, and then he called to me. And what he shared with both of us when he called was that moment when Abigail and the group of hostages that were released on Sunday were actually when they had arrived in Israel. So they were no longer in Gaza. And he was firstly calling to say that they were safe, that Abigail was back in Israel. The second thing that he committed to was making sure that all of the rest of the hostages, that he would and his administration, with the support of the Qatar government and Egypt and other organizations and nations, he was committed to making sure that all of the rest of the hostages, all of these people were returned to their loved ones. And the one thing that I said to him was, he had said towards the end of his talk on his press conference, was that he just wanted to give Abigail a hug. And I said to him that those words resonated with me so deeply, because all we want to do, and I think so many people want to do, is give this child who was just turned 4 this big hug to say that she is loved
And that she's safe.
and that she was safe. And so that was the whole conversation. It was really just reassuring. It was empathy, and it was love, and it was appreciation that that Abigail was safe.
How has it felt to be the recipient of such an outpouring of love and support from so many, Noa, on Abigail's behalf?
I think it's been our oxygen. It's the one thing that has kept us going in these really just unimaginable circumstances, has been the outpouring of love and support for us and for Abigail.
And I'll just add that the love and support has come from people all over the world, people from all religions, all places. And as Noa said, it's been what has actually nourished the family in Israel, as well as us here doing the work in America, is just this outpouring of love and empathy and care for this child, this innocent child, that no child should ever be a hostage, not for 1 minute. And I think that the basic humanity of people recognize that, and that was where this came from. And the excitement and the calls and the letters and the notes that we received when Abigail came back, it was as if it was their child who came back. It was truly beautiful.
As you mentioned earlier, Abigail has been through unimaginable trauma, what she witnessed and then what she experienced. How do you think she will heal, or how are you helping her heal, or her family? I know she's under the care of her aunt and uncle and other relatives as well. But what is being done not only for Abigail, but for her siblings who are 6 and 10, who also witnessed, though they weren't taken hostage, witnessed horrific things at such a young age?
Absolutely. I think, as you said, also these children, 6 and 10, spent 50 days wondering where their little sister is. And
not to mention losing their parents.
Yeah. And not to mention
seeing them murdered.
Exactly.
So what is being done? Obviously, I mean, that kind of trauma at that age is unimaginable.
It's unimaginable. I think, there's not a lot of precedent or background on how to reintegrate a child who has gone through just these unimaginable horrors, and her siblings. But what we can say is that they are embraced by love. They are well supported by their family. Their family is well supported by their community, and they will do everything to make sure that these children get the best chance at life after everything they've been through.
I know that Liz and Noa, you have become close to the other families who have been in the same boat as you all have been in, and that you have grown very close. There are still families who have not had their loved ones returned. And I'm curious if you've been in touch with them, how they're doing, and what those conversations have been like.
Well, we've been in touch with them. We were just with them in DC with a group of families this last week. We were meeting with people on the Hill, leaders on the Hill. We were meeting with the International Red Cross. We met with, we spoke with many reporters. We spoke at a hearing with the Foreign Relations Committee for the House. As it's been reported, we also met with Jake Sullivan at the White House. And the thing that we keep talking about is that Abigail is home. She is the youngest American Israeli who's been released, but there are 8 other American Israelis who have not been released. There are 140, 150 hostages, people who have not been released. And through this process, you've become a family. And one of the things that people sort of wonder is, wait, you're still doing this? And yes, we're still doing this because they're all of our family. These children, these boys that are in their teens and in their early 20s and in their 30s, they could be our children. They could be Noah's brother. These girls that are still there, they could be our family. And
the fathers, the grandfathers, and I think it's really unimaginable. And until you're in this kind of situation to understand just the level of anguish, of torment that these families are going through. And unfortunately, we understand, we have a big insight into just how horrible this is. And we're going to do all that we can to continue to support these families until we see again their grandfathers, their fathers and their sons, their daughters, children who are still there come back.
And it's a family. It's not the family that you thought on October 6th you would ever know. But in the last 7, 8 weeks, where it's 8 weeks now, where they have been hostages, we have become each other's hope. And it's interesting because, you know, they look at Abigail and they understand why a 4-year-old needed to be released and should have been released in the first group of hostages. But the one thing that connects us all is that we are all going to be committed until every hostage, every person is returned to their loved ones. And it's just in what we're going to keep doing. There's no question about it. We must and we will. And they are our family now.
The 7-day humanitarian pause has now ended, as you both know, and the fighting has resumed in Gaza. More than 15,000 Palestinians have reportedly been killed since this conflict began. What are your hopes for the future?
We are hopeful that everyone who is working towards guaranteeing another pause and more hostages coming back to their loved ones, that this is still something that everyone is working really hard on. There is now precedent, there is a framework in place, and we hope to see more people coming home soon now.
Has Abigail been told that she will never see her mother or father again?
I think it's safe to say at this point that Abigail is aware that her parents are gone.
And one of the things that has been very interesting is that the 6-year-old sister, the 10-year-old brother, they have been very honest and very clear, and they have articulated the story many, many times about what happened that day. And I think that is part of their process, which is to be able to share that with the family and share that with their community. And we know that Abigail is a very, very smart little girl, and there isn't a way to hide those things. And now that she has been home, the people that received her were her aunt and her grandmother. She knows that she does not have parents. How much does a 4-year-old take in on those questions or on that situation? None of us know, but she is very aware of where she is, what happened, and that she is not going to have her parents for who she is right now as a 4-year-old who literally has been out of Hamas territory for only 5 days.
And I'll add that it's hard to say the word silver lining in such a horrible situation, but it's that her siblings didn't lose Abigail and that Abigail has her siblings.
Liz and Noah, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing our stories, and thank you for continuing to make this important for people to know what happened on October 7th.